Greetings, my friends. Welcome to the next installment of DEFCON Aftermath. We're taking a look at defenders and controllers and head-to-head matchups, comparing different power sets, specifically their buff-debuff sets, and trying to figure out which of these classic archetypes is the superior supporting archetype in the game, at least old school classical archetypes. And putting this argument to bed once and for all. In the original series, DEFCON 5, I learned from the data collected with that 5 comparisons that controllers were the superior archetype, but by a smidge. And it seemed to be mainly because of their perma pets that they have, because of the control sets. But this go round in DEFCON Aftermath, we are looking at the same style of comparison, 5 different power sets on the support side. And we're looking at them against higher level challenges. We're looking at them against 801 Architect Entertainment challenges, incarnate level stuff. So that, I think, is where we might see where the defender's superior buffing numbers may make a difference, more so than the controller's perma pets. But anyway, here we are in round 3 of DEFCON Aftermath, and we are looking at an old school favorite, Radiation Emission. This is one of your classic power sets from the old school game. And this one was up there with kinetics, empathy, force field, dark miasma, a handful of others from the original game. And this one has always been a fan favorite of a powerful set, but I also think it's fairly underrepresented these days. I don't see as many rads out there as you used to back in the day. And quite frankly, it's because there are better sets out there now. Not that Radiation's a bad set, but I think it's a tough set to play well, I think, just because you got the toggles, which we'll take a look at. But anyway, it's not as easy to use, I think, as some of the more modern sets. So it probably could use a touch up, a little bit of a cleanup, a modernization, perhaps. Not that it's a bad set at all. I mean, it's a very solid set, but for my money, if I had to roll up a new defender, controller, corruptor, mastermind, Radiation wouldn't be at the top 5 of my list. There's other ones I think do a lot of what it does, do it smoother, do it better. But Radiation does bring some tools to the table that other sets don't. And I think its true advantage is just the broad spectrum of abilities it brings out there. And it is very, very good at debuffing the bejesus out of a bunch of targets, especially hard targets. So let's go ahead and take a look at the powers and the numbers behind them and see what I'm talking about. So our first choice that you can make with your character is pick ye old PB AoE heal. So everybody loves healing, right? Especially you as a defender controller. You need to be able to heal yourself. That's a great benefit. You don't need a target like you would with kinetics or with, dark. Instead, you just click a button and a heal bursts out and you get heals and your allies get heals and everybody's happy. And the problem with this power is it's a little bit weak, I think, as far as the raw numbers. I might be wrong about that. Let's go ahead and take a quick look, though. Here's the City of Data entry for Radiant Aura. And the power is going to heal you and your allies around you for a $134. The radius is 25 feet on it. The target, target cap's pretty much everybody. Endurance, a little bit hefty at 13. Recharge, not bad at 8. So you can get that down to 4 or so, no problem. You can cut your endurance cost in half. You can double this healing with some decent slotting. So raw out of the box, it's a 133, 134. Now let's compare that to, say, something like Empathy's heal and see how it stacks up. Healing Aura, 133. So it's identical. I thought back in the day it was weaker. But maybe they've updated it. Thermal radiation, let me just double check that. Warmth is 133. Okay, so the out-of-the-box PBOE heals are about 134. So I guess I take it back. It's as good as the other heals that are out there. Then our next power, the one that you are taking, or more than likely taking radiation for, because if you're taking radiation for the PBO heal, that's dumb. I'm sorry, but that's, it's nice to have it, but that's not the reason to take radiation. For radiation, you're taking it because of these debuffs and some of the buffs. So here's our first one, radiation infection. This is a toggle, so you're going to throw it on an enemy, and then a bunch of the other enemies surrounding that target are also going to be painted with radiation infection, and they are all going to suffer a debuff of both defense, which is an offensive stat in my opinion, because it's going to allow you and your teammates to hit more often and do more damage. And then you've got the minus to hit debuff, which is what I would call a defensive debuff. It's going to make and give you some more survivability because your enemy has a harder time hitting you. So those are the benefits of radiation infection. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of the numbers on it to see how good it is. So if we go ahead and scroll down a little bit, the Defender version is clocking in at a 31 and a quarter strength debuff. So that's pretty chunky, right? You're just about eliminating a third of the enemy's defense, and you're lowering their to hit by 30%. And I think the base to hit for an enemy out of the box, at least the 54 times 8 content, if I think it's 50%. I think incarnate stuff is 62.5, I think. So taking this chunk out of these guys, especially if you slot it up a little bit, that's going to make you much safer, especially if you combine this with a little bit of defense on your side. And then this is also not bad against incarnate stuff because you're cutting their to hit down in half roughly. And these incarnate numbers might be higher. I think players have 75%. That's, I think, the difference, if I remember. But hey, what's this power? How does it work? So you throw it on an enemy. The range on your cast is 70 feet. So that means if you are standing here, you can throw this thing out on a target up to 70 feet distant from you. And then once that target is painted with this power, it is going to emanate in a 15-foot radius this debuff, this minus to hit, this minus defense. And you can get up to 16 people. So you really want clumped enemies. And that's something to think about when I start talking about the specific builds I'm going to be comparing here. So clumping is going to be a key ability. Recharge 8 seconds again, no big deal on that. Half a second activation, that's a little bit long-ish, I think. The rooting time, the animation time, these are fairly long as well. So this is not something you kind of want to be stuck in when something's about to hit, because that can get you killed. Endurance is a little bit hefty. I think it's a half of endurance per second. So keep that in mind, especially at early levels. It is radiation is a pretty thirsty set to operate effectively, and that's one of the things I think that makes it challenging, and also maybe one of the reasons it's not as popular. The other thing I do want to do is compare that to the controller numbers, because this is where I think these tests that I'm doing, the aftermath tests with the 801 missions, this is where I think we're going to see differences, or why we're going to see differences, because in standard 54 times 8 content that I ran in the original DEFCON 5 series, which the controllers edged out the defenders by a little smidge, and mainly that's because, in my opinion, from what I can see from the data, permanent pets, the controllers had them, and those pets were contributing extra data. They were essentially an extra body, an extra teammate on the field, where the defenders didn't have, and the defenders had to make up the damage with their attack set. So that single pet was essentially washing the defender's advantage with their secondary, their blast set. So the only other advantage that defenders had was their superior buff debuff percentages. And I don't think at 54 times 8 content, like radio missions, paper missions, tip missions, the differences between the defenders and controllers, which are a few percentage points, were enough to see it, because the enemy really wasn't strong enough to test the defender's superiority. But here we can see the comparison. The defender we just saw was 31.25. These guys are 25. So the defenders have a 6.25% advantage on these numbers. Against 54 times 8, probably not going to notice it too much. But against the incarnate level stuff, you might notice that. Okay, it might make a bigger difference. So that's what we're going to find out with these tests. And so far, it's been interesting in my first 2 rounds that I ran with cold domination and empathy. And if you haven't seen those videos yet, you should go back over to my channel, check out the playlist there, subscribe while you're over there, and you can take a look at all the footage, team action, the builds, the solos, all the stats, all the analysis, and make your own decisions. All right, our next power is accelerate metabolism. This is another one of those, classic bread and butter powers that is the reason for taking radiation. Now, I will say this. I don't think it's nearly as good as it used to be. Not that the power has changed at all, but the game has changed, and there are plenty of other buff sets out there that can do this sort of thing and probably do it better or have other tricks in the toolbox. Plus, the game has changed so much that the things that the accelerate metabolism brought to the table just aren't as important anymore. Example, the speed increasing. That used to be nice when you got a travel power. You had to wait till I think it was a level 12 back in the old day. Then the recovery, the extra endurance, that was very nice because you didn't get stamina if you even took it because it wasn't automatic. That was level 20. So people were always running out of endurance back in the day, and you had to jog everywhere and take the train everywhere. Now we've got free travel powers. You get travel powers level 4 or whatever. You got teleportation systems, base porters everywhere, right? No big deal. The fitness pool is automatic, so you don't even have to worry about taking stamina. You get it. You don't even need to slot it that much. So anyway, those 2 things aren't as important. Recharge is always nice, of course, but there are again other powers out in the game now that give recharge and better numbers than accelerate metabolism does. So I think the only 2 things that are a little bit interesting or unique, the damage boost, of course, is always nice. Recharge again, I'm not going to poo-poo it, but I also think this resistance to effects is pretty solid, even though most people don't really think of it as useful. But for squishies, this is pretty good to have that extra layer of protection. Or even if you're, melee types, as you're going to see, because the things that it actually gives you resistance to are interesting, not super common. So let's take a look. Here it is, accelerate metabolism. It's a click. Recharge, we're looking at, 422 seconds for some strange, bizarre reason. I don't know where that number came from exactly, but whatever. Endurance is pretty hefty, 15, so you need to have some endurance to click this. The recharge is really long. The duration is pretty good, though, 120 seconds. So most people, you can get perma AM if you really push for recharge in your build, which a lot of people do. I don't particularly worry about it. I'm not too concerned about it. If I can get this thing down to about 200 seconds, I'm pretty happy because now I've got it up for 2 minutes and down for a minute. So it's not a huge deal to me. I'm not worried that, I don't have it at every possible second of the game. Radius 25 feet, so you and all your allies around you are going to get these buffs. And then the buffs are what you're seeing here. Here's the run speed, the movement speed, which is not a big deal really anymore. Here's the damage, 25%. That's pretty nice. This is the defender numbers. The controller number is 20. And then you get recovery and recharge boosting, which recovery is, decent. Recharge is nice, of course. And then here are the other 2 things I think as a squishy or as even a non-squishy could find interesting. So as a squishy, you're getting some mez protection. It's not preventing you from being mez, but it decreases the duration of those mezes, 216.25%. I don't know exact math on that, but it reduces how long you're held or immobilized, stunned, or slept. And the other one that's interesting, and I didn't realize this until I started, looking over these powers for this video, is resistant to some debuffs, it looks like. So endurance and recovery debuffs. It's like sappers or something like that, right? People with electro attacks. You get a 65% or so resistance to those numbers. The controller numbers are in the 50s, if I remember, and the numbers here are 180 or so for controllers. So again, you're seeing some advantages in the percentages for the defenders. The recoveries and the recharges are no different, and the run speed I think is the same as well. So a lot of times the controllers just get the same numbers as defenders. But there you go. It's a hodgepodge of buffs that you and your whole teammate, your entire team is going to benefit from. All right, then comes your next bread and butter power. I mean, really, and this is the other thing about radiation that's pretty strong is that you get your four kind of bread and butter powers right away. Like you could take these four powers and not take another thing out of radiation and really not miss them. The rest of these things are more luxuries or fluff or useless depending on your perspective. These four powers makes you an early bloomer. Okay, so you've got a heal, you got two toggle debuffs that are really going to help you survive and destroy enemies, and you got a personal buff and a team buff. So pretty solid stuff. The rest of the things I don't think are anywhere near as usable or required as these four. So for sure you're taking these four powers. The problem is you have another toggle. So two toggles at an early level by like level 6. I do not recommend. It's going to take too much of your endurance. But let's take a look at the numbers here, what this power does. So it's going to pair up with your radiation infection nicely. You're getting a minus damage and minus resistance debuff. So this is again that defensive debuff and the offensive debuff flip-flop combination, just like you saw up here in radiation infection, where the minus defense is an offensive tool and the minus hit's a defensive tool. So between these two, you're debuffing pretty hard major stat categories of your enemy, and not just a single target, it's a whole bunch of them. I think they both have target caps of 16. You're really going to be able to shred the enemy's ability to resist your attacks and the enemy's ability to deal damage to you, hit you in the first place. So good 1-2 combo. You definitely want to take them. Let's look at the actual numbers though, so we can do a side-by-side. So here's enervating field for your defender. Minus 25% damage, minus 30% damage resistance. Let's see what the controller numbers are, because I suspect it might even be the same. We'll see. 25 and 30 on the controller side. Enervating field is 20 and 22.5. All right, so they're a little bit weaker. Okay, interesting. So minus 20 damage, minus 22.5 damage resistance. All right, so there is a difference between those two. Okay. Wasn't suspecting it because some of the powers are not different. But there you are. So again, another few percent difference between these two. It'll be interesting to see if it means anything. Radius is 15 feet. I just want to double check radiation infection. I thought radiation infection was bigger. Nope, 15 feet as well. Okay. So 15-foot radius. A little thing that I'll mention now, that another reason why radiation is a good set or a unique set. It's, I think, the only one in the games that still has two distinct debuff toggles. I don't think there is any other set out there that has that. There are other sets that do all these things, yes, but it's the only one that has two distinct toggles that do them. Now, the reason I mention that is not necessarily that, ooh, that's a great thing, because I would rather just have it all in one toggle, but of course that'd be OP. But the interesting about this is that it's going to allow you, and you might see this in some of the solo play, pull two groups simultaneously. So it's a great little trick, and it's something that we'll talk about as we get into this builds and stuff. But you can throw this on one group and this on another nearby group. And let's say you're standing here. It can allow you to pull two groups in your direction, especially if you've got, obviously, line of sight breakage. You can pull a bunch of people towards you, and they're all going to clump together. And it's not that risky because you've got a lot of this debuff going on And then depending on what you combine it with, on the blasting side as a defender, or the controls on the control side, you could pretty much mop up an entire group without much risk to yourself. Now, of course, if you get stunned or whatever else, things don't detoggle like they used to in the old game, but it suppresses the toggles so they don't work anymore. So if you get held or stunned, I'm pretty sure the enemy no longer is affected by these debuffs, and then they can start whomping on you. All right, so there is your fourth power, and like I said, this is your bread and butter. You're taking all four of these, and you're pretty much set. I mean, so much so that you could pretty much stop here. So this might actually be a good set for, let's say, corruptors. You just want to focus on blasting, or offender builds for a defender where you just want to focus more on blasting and pool powers and stuff, because you could pretty much survive the game with just those four powers. Now, what else do you get in your toolkit? There's mutation, which is an ally res. I've spoken on ally reses a lot with the other sets. I'm not a fan of them just in general because there's so many other ways to res people in the game, and I also find that half the time you want to res somebody, by the time you click and res them, they've already res themselves, or somebody else has res them, because there's so much ways to get up off the ground these days, and this can end up being a wasted power, a wasted pick. You barely use it. You only use it because people are dying, and the only reason they're dying is maybe you didn't pick something else that could have kept them alive. So that's the one problem I have with it. And while I'm talking about that one, I might as well talk about Fallout, which is over here, because it kind of goes hand in hand with this power. This is a very unique power. I think the only other person that comes close would be War Shades, maybe. It's essentially make a corpse bomb. So after somebody's dead, you can do Fallout. You click on them. I think it's off of them. I don't think it's off of you. But there is an explosion of energy damage, and the foe is minus to hit, minus defense, minus damage, minus resistance. So it's a good, damage, a good debuff. Let's go take a look at the numbers so you can see exactly what we're looking at. So the recharge is 300 seconds, which is another ding against it. The endurance cost is 20. It's another ding against it. It requires a dead ally, which is a ding. They have to be within 60 feet. You have to target them. Ding. Then the fallout damage. Let's see what it is. All right. So the debuff is minus 30 defense. Good damage, 222. Minus 50% resistance. Minus 30% damage. Minus 30% to hit. So, solid, right? 30-second bunch of debuffs. But again, somebody needs to die. Controller's obviously weaker. 188 damage. 222. That's their chance to, looks like containment damage or something like that. And corruptors have a different numbers. But anyway, so good debuff, but long recharge, heavy endurance. Somebody needs to die. Now, if it's a strategy thing, like I remember back in the day, people used to bring along some low-level character. This is before, I think, the auto side kicking days. You'd bring a lowbie onto your team, maybe an alt or something that you were dual boxing, and you'd bring this alt and teleport them around and let them die, and then Fallout explode people to get the big damage and the debuff and stuff. And then you would use your res to just bring them back in. You would probably have vengeance from the leadership pool on top of that. So you could, then mutate and bring them back to life, because I think mutate also does some, what's that? A boost. Let's see, concentrated damage. Mutated hero has increased damage, chance to hit, endurance, recover, and attack speed, and then they're weakened. So yeah, when they get back up, they have a buff temporarily. So mutations, decent for that. So you could come up with some combination of teleport, mutation, fallout, and vengeance, and that's your thing, right? You're bringing your corpse bomb. I could see a theme, an actual character built around that concept, which could be cool. But for the practical game, you're running and gunning with, team of 8. It's just not happening. Now, on the 801 incarnate stuff, we've had a lot of deaths, so this actually could be a good combination. But are you going to spend 2 of your picks on a chance that somebody dies? To me, that's where the problem is. I'm investing a lot from my character, so I'm not taking other things, and they're only usable if somebody's dead. Excuse me. Now, Homecoming's done a good job of making some of these powers usable even when you're alive, but I don't think they've done it with radiation powers. And that's kind of one of the things about I think the set could use a refresh, another pass to make some of these powers more useful. So maybe Fallout's usable on a living target. Maybe mutations usable on yourself. I don't know. So just some options like that would make this set a little bit more user friendly and usable. But right there's two powers you could skip without blinking an eye. Lingering Radiation's your next power. This, in my opinion, is a must-have take. If you're planning on fighting tougher stuff like, AVs, heroes, monsters, etc. Because of the big old minus regen you get out of it. It's also got a nice slow effect to it, so that's a nice soft control. And some minus recharge. So it's a good debuff in that regard. Now, lower level game, you don't need the minus regen, right? The minus speed, the minus recharge is nice, but you don't need the minus regen, which is its big selling point. The debuff numbers are pretty darn good, and the thing I like this for is because it does have slow sets you can slot in it. There are some nice sets out there that you can get some damage procs and some bonuses for, and you can throw it into this power, and it's not just sort of a waste. You can make it into a damaging attack. But here you go. It's got some good minus 75% movement speed debuffing. You've got the minus, I think, yeah, the recharge in there, 75% recharge debuff. So you could kind of build around that idea of being a big old minus recharge build, like a psi blasting radiation defender, because the psi has some good minus recharge. I could see that being a concept. Not that I'm saying that's what I built mine around, but that's something you could do. But here it is, bang, this big old minus regen power. That's pretty chunky. Throwing that against some big tougher enemies, and the duration is 30 seconds. So for 30 seconds you're really chopping into a target's regeneration, AVs and stuff. So you can help melt hard targets. So back in the day when they used to run those fire rad teams like controllers or corruptors and defenders, whatever, all fire rad, everybody's chucking those lingering radiations on bosses or on AVs, elite bosses, monsters. They would just freaking get annihilated. They didn't have any regeneration left. And then you have all the debuffing on them, the toggles like the minus resistance. It's game over. Things are dead. So great power. Definitely would take it. It's not a must have, but it's good. 90-second recharge, that's nothing. You can get that down to 30, 40, whatever, no big deal. 15 endurance is again pretty hefty. Radius is huge, right? 25-foot radius and then up to 16 targets. So you can hit a whole bunch of guys with this. And the range is nice. 80-foot range on this thing. It's great power. Choking Cloud. This power is, in my opinion, OP as F. The original version really wasn't that great, right? It was a toggle. So you have yet another toggle. And it would have a low mag hold. So mag 1, mag 2. Depending, I think it's, yeah, so it's 80% mag 1, and then it can proc a mag 2. I forget exactly how these numbers work, but anyway, you can hold minions was pretty much your reliable, and it wasn't like guaranteed, but you could hold maybe a lieutenant, something like that. So it wasn't guaranteed. You'd walk in, you're bleeding endurance all over the place because it's got a 0.65, and so it's even worse than your two other toggles that you're running. And the radius is 15 feet, so you can aggro pretty easily. They're not necessarily held. They, now want to kill you. You're in bleeding endurance. You got your toggles running. You bleed more endurance. So it was sort of a aggro magnet. But what Homecoming did, and I get why they did it, but I think it was ridiculous. It no longer needs to hit. Like, it doesn't take accuracy anymore. It's auto. So it automatically applies holds. Now, again, it's not all the time, but that's pretty high percentage for holding. And especially if you're a controller who has holds already and gets containment damage out of holding, this is pretty much a guaranteed damage boost right here just by standing near people. So this is the problem that I was always like, why did you make this auto hit? I think the counter argument was, well, if you had to slot it for damage or accuracy and it was low accuracy and you didn't hit, then it was sort of, you really had to pump slots into it to make it any good, and it was a short duration hold, 6 seconds. But I think they kind of swung it in the other direction too far. I love it because of that, because I just run this damn toggle and I'm holding people that get near me, and it becomes part of your plan because you can just walk into melee and start holding targets without much trouble. And then the last power we have on the books, and another unique weirdo power, it's a big old PB AoE explosion hold. So this actually stacks nicely with Choking Cloud, but it also has some more debuff, minus endurance, some more minus regen. And then if you're a robot, and exactly what qualifies as robots in the game or not, I don't know. But it does, I think, damage against them. It messes them up. But here's the problem. It jacks up your own recoveries. So you click it, and you can't recover for a while, your endurance. And if you combine that with your toggles you're running and your blasting or controlling you're doing, you can run out of endurance pretty quickly with EM Pulse. But here's what it does. You unleash a massive pulse of EM energy. You affect machines. It's even power enough to affect synaptic patterns. It drains endurance, hit points, regen, blah, blah, blah. Using the power uses a lot of endurance, leaves you unable to recover. So here's the endurance cost on it, 20.8. And then you have this minus 1,000 recovery for 15 seconds. So you're basically blowing off a fifth of your endurance. You can't recover anything for 15 seconds. And if you've already been bleeding out endurance from your other toggles, it's kind of like a click this once and then stand around and either eat a blue Skittle, or you need to not do anything for a few seconds until you're recovering. But area of effect radius, check out a 60-foot radius. Disgusting, right? Big old explosion. And if you're a target that has the electronic, I guess, tag, then you're going to take this damage, energy damage. But there's a hold, mag 3 hold on it. That's big. Endurance, big old chunk of endurance, big old minus regen. I think, again, it can critical hold a target. So you can get a boss held with this thing. If you combine it with your Choking Cloud, if you're in point blank range, right, you're going to have like mag up to 6 or something like that. A hold you're able to throw out there. So you should be able to hold everybody with EMP. It's just risky because of the endurance. So if you have a way to get your endurance back, then it's not a big deal. But you can destroy people's endurance too. This could give you an option for some sort of sapper build. I don't know if anybody's ever done that with EMP, but the minus 50%, I mean, you're taking off half the guy's health or endurance. You could do it to the whole bunch of people standing around you. If you slot this thing up, you could minus 70, 80%, whatever, 90% endurance. I don't know how high you could slot this, but you could get it up there pretty high and have a one-shot just endurance drain. That could be a thing. Combine it with, let's say, electrical blast. Now you've got yourself another little gimmick. So radiation's nice because you can kind of slot it into different, strategies. So you can pair it with a lot of different ideas and get some good mileage out of it. So there you go. That is Radiation Emission. So that leaves us, of course, with what characters are we going to pair or create with this Radiation Emission? The spectrum of really a lot of debuff. It's probably, I think, 3/4 debuff, 1/4 buff. More on the debuff side than buffing, of course. But who or what should you team this up with? You got lots of options. I've given you a couple choices. So here's what I'm doing with mine. Drum roll, please. Bang, round 4. Is it round 4? I think it's round 3, isn't it? I think it's round 3 challengers. Yes, just checked. It's round 3, so I've made the change. This is only round 3. We have in the defender corner, Despina, Radiation Emission, Water Blast, Energy Mastery. I've played Water Blast at least. I just had it with Ankh, my empathy defender. I think I had it earlier in DEFCON 5, but I like Water Blast, and you're going to see what I'm going to do with it that makes sense here. And then in the controller corner, we have Trinculo, Electric Control, Radiation Emission, Mew Mastery. I think that one's a little more obvious. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the plan here. Despina, Radiation, Water, Energy Mastery. Character concept, she's this toxic net runner, I'm calling it. Once a loyalist hacker, now a radioactive weapon built from betrayal. She was born from exposure to the irradiated waste dumped from the Keys reactor into the underground to flush resistance holdouts. So I imagine she was some sort of spy working for the loyalists, infiltrating the resistance, and probably gave up the hideouts or something like that. And of course, the loyalists don't really care about casualties and dumped and flooded the tunnels with some radioactive waste to smoke out these resistance scum. Despina was caught up in that. It mutated her into this toxic mutant. Playstyle. Pulses, radiation fields, and surging like toxic radioactive water blasts. Playing at mid-range. She's going to be rotating around the edge of the fight, destabilizing clustered enemies, and purging the unclean. So I foresee her hanging back, throwing the toggles out there, right? Throwing a lingering radiation on there, and then pew, 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 firing away from range, keeping things toxified. Water Blast. I'm not going to go through Water Blast again because I went through it in Ank's video. So if you haven't seen Ank's video, you need to go back and check out my empathy matchup from just the last DEFCON Aftermath when I had my defender Ankh. He was empathy Water Blast, and he took on Frisson Sensate, my controller, who was Symphony Control and empathy. So I did a whole rundown of what Water Blast is all about there. What I will at least spoil you with is the concept here, because I think you can maybe see where we're going. From radiation, the big thing I'm looking at is lingering rad and the debuff toggles. Plus those toggles, right? Enervating field and radiation infection. Because if I can get enemies clumped and stay clumped, I can maximize toggle exposure. And in order to do that, without a control set, I needed the next best thing, and that would be slows. So lingering radiation, I already mentioned, has some good minus speed, minus recharge. What else could I do to slow things down? Well, water actually has some decent minus speed effects in it. Hydroblast has some. Then you got Whirlpool has some. And so does Geyser. And so does Water Jet. And so does Dehydrate. The other thing that I like about it is that you've got some knockdown here with Water Burst, Hydro Burst, and with Geyser in the knockup. So I'm going to be able to do a lot of slowing plus some knockdowning, keeping targets on their back, and even when they're moving, they're very slow. That's going to allow me to concentrate those toggles and then pound on them with water's copious amounts of AoE, because you got Water Burst AoE, Whirlpool AoE, Steam Sprays a cone, so there's some more AoE, and Geysers got some AoE. So we got some good options here that we can bring together and make the enemies pay for daring to challenge Despina. Then we've got Trinculo, Electric Control, Radiation Emission, and Mew Mastery. As you can imagine, he's going to be leveraging not just this, but he's going to be leveraging a lot of drain, minus endurance. But not just that. Electric Control brings to the table a lot of other debuffing besides endurance drain. It's got some sleeping. It's got confuse. It's got jolting chains. So you got some knockdown. So you got your suite of powers from Electric Control. But if you couple that with Radiation Emission, has some of that soft control as well, with the lingering radiation, with the choking cloud, and with the EMP. So there is some decent control sitting here. And the big thing I saw with Trinculo that I think is going to be fun is you're going to have a combination of Choking Cloud and the other power from electrical control is, what is it? Conductive Aura. So these two powers are going to stack together with some control effects, endurance draining, holding, etc. And I'm able to drop a patch static field underneath my enemies. So that combination is going to be similar to what you see with Despina. It's going to allow me to cluster and concentrate enemies and keep them in place for the debuffing. But his concept is this: he's a phantom tech operative. His power suit was forged within a negative dimension of some form, some unstable realm of antiprotonic energy and exotic particles. He doesn't just control electricity, he unmakes it. He drains power from his enemies, nullifies motion, and floods the air with disruptive current. Playstyle: he is going to be controlling the battlefield from the center. He is going to be very at risk. I can't wait to see what this guy can do because I'm going to get him into melee and he's going to want to stay there because of what I was just talking about, the overlapping PB AoE. He's going to have stunning, sleeping, endurance draining. It should be more holds, not stuns, from the cloud, choking cloud, holds. So anyway, sleeps, endurance drain, right? That's all going to be all stacking with the patch, right? So imagine him just standing on his own patch, conductive aura running, choking cloud running. His toggle, debuff toggles are on the enemy. He's throwing lingering radiation on them. He's going to be combining all that layers of debuffery to sap the damage, the recharge, the resistance, and then start going to town on them. And his gremlins are going to town on them. And his teammates are going to town on them. It's just that he needs to get into proximity to the enemy. Let's take a deeper dive on electric control because I don't think I've talked about electric control in a while. I think last time was DEFCON 5, the very first episode I think I did. I believe my controller there was electric control. But anyway, let's go ahead and take a look at the numbers here, the powers here. So electric control, some of the stuff is standard, but electric control is a very strong, I think maybe one of the strongest control sets out there. And it's also a set that does ultimately allow you to do the sapper role much more effectively than probably blast sets or melee sets based upon minus endurance. So you're going to see minus endurance throughout the powers. I mean, pretty much all of them have it. Even I think the gremlins have it in their attacks. So like everything you do is minus endurance. Okay, you've got a standard single target immobilize, a standard single target hold. Both have the minus endurance. Electric fence is going to have some minus movement here with the fly. And then it's also going to prevent knockbacks on single targets. Then chain fences is your AoE. And that's another immobilize with some more minus fly. Some more minus endurance, of course. So right here, you kind of your 1, 2, 3 attacks. Jolting chain is a really nice power. And it's a chain. It doesn't do a ton of damage, but it does have a chaining knockdown. It's kind of like having a second single target hold, but maybe in a second AoE hold because it will jump target to target, knocking multiple people over, draining some endurance as you go. And you can slot with some knockdown sets, either some damage procs, a plus recharge. You can even slot it for a knockdown if you want to throw people across the room with a jolt, which is always amusing. But these are some nice 1, 2, 3, 4 attacks you can line up in your early career. And similar to radiation in that sense, you've got a nice full suite of attacks sitting here until your bigger AoE controls come online. You can get through the early levels no problem with these 4 combined with the 4 radiation powers I talked about, and effectively control a battlefield and buff and support and debuff all you want. Then you got conductive aura. Love this power. A PBAOE toggle. So this is going to pair up nicely with the choking cloud, I think. Minus endurance draining, recovery, regen, boosting for you. Let's go ahead and take a look at the numbers on that power at least. The other ones aren't as exciting, I don't think, but let's go ahead and pull it up for clear this off, go over to controllers and electrical control. So let's just take a look at least the minus endurance numbers. I don't think the damage is anything like you're going to go ooh and ah. But here we go. So endurance wise, you're looking at not a ton here, minus, almost 3% endurance with your single target immobilize. Okay, that's no big deal. Tesla cage is going to do a hold. It's going to do some damage. You're getting minus 7%. Just looking at about minus 10% endurance on a single target at this point. Chain fences. This is a nice power because you can slot it for lots of damage procs and stuff. Here's another 10%. So at this point, you can minus 20% a single target, minus 10% a whole bunch of targets. And then the jolting chain. This is going to have the knockdown, like I said. But it also has a 10%. So you could effectively at this point have what, minus 30% on a single target. And minus 10% on a bunch of targets. Does some damage, a little bit of knockback. And I forget how many times it can jump up to, maybe like 3 different targets. I forget. Maybe more. It says the max targets are 16, but I don't think I've ever seen it jump that many times. That'd be a freaking miracle if it did. I think there's a random chance to jump to a new target each time. Endurance a little hefty on this one, 10. So it is a spammable attack because the recharge is low. But you got to be careful because it's going to suck a lot of your endurance. You want to slot that up early if you're going to be using it a lot. And then the conducting aura is the one I wanted to really look at. So here's conductive aura, minus 10% endurance. And then we've got you're getting a 3% recovery, 5% regen. And I believe this is going to tick. It's going to proc. It doesn't just stop. So I think once they're in range of you, you're going to constantly fire this minus 10% over and over. I don't know what the tick rate is. I don't know if it's on here anywhere that you can see. So that's the thing. I mean, here they're saying the 2.25 seconds on the buff side. So I imagine this minus 10% is about the same. So the way I interpret this is every 2.25 seconds, you're going to get a boost of recovery and a boost of your regen. So it gives you some more survivability. And then your enemies around you are getting a 10% of their endurance drained. And remember, you're also hitting them with your fences there, or cages, whatever that thing's called. So you're getting, at this point, you're getting close to 40-50% endurance drain on a primary target and a good 20% on everybody just by hitting them once. Radius on this thing's pretty huge, 20 feet. And the endurance is free, so you just have it on. It doesn't cost you anything. So yeah, between that and fences, you can do some good spamming of endurance draining. 8 seconds on the recharge here. But this is pretty expensive, 15. So you could definitely want to slot that for endurance reduction. Then, so between, fences and aura, you're doing some good draining to tons of guys at the same time. And then you got static field laying down underneath them on top of that. Static field, you can throw it out to 60 feet away from you. The radius on this thing, let's open it up here. The radius on this thing is 20 feet, so that's pretty sizable, 16 targets. And the drain on this one is, let's see, does sleep, yeah. 3% endurance drain. Again, now that's going to be tickable. I don't know exactly the rate. I'm guessing the 4.25 seconds like you're seeing in the jump height and recharge strength. So it's debuffing a lot of different things. And it's causing a sleep. So guys are falling asleep, then they're getting drained, and then they're getting minus recharge and minus movement speed. So it's just a nasty power. The duration on this thing, let me look at the duration. How long does this thing sit out there for? Oh, where are you, duration? 16, 20. Must be on the other page, right? Duration. I don't know. I don't see it here. 25 seconds. All right, so 25 seconds, this static field is sitting out. The recharge on the cast is what? Fifth recharge is 40 seconds. So you can perma this no problem, right? I mean, you get a little recharge in here and just keep throwing this thing out. So you got, again, a bunch more chances to drain endurance, 3 every few seconds. So now we're getting, everybody's being drained just within the first few seconds, like 25%. Your main target's been drained 50+% at this point. And you can just start spamming some of these powers, or they don't, your conductive aura, you don't have to do anything. The static field, you don't have to do anything once you cast it. So really strong power. Put that underneath where you're standing with these other things running. And as long as he's able to kind of survive that initial alpha, that initial engagement, he's going to be good to go. Soloing, that'll be riskier, but you can drop static field around a corner as an example. But on a team, I think this is going to work because let's say my tank goes in there first. I give them a couple seconds to get settled. I can then go in there, drop static field, walk in with conductive aura and choking cloud going, start hitting with fences, start hitting with chain. I'm going to have my gremlins jumping in a second. Okay, so lots of things can start just pounding away. Your next power is your hold, your AoE hold Tesla coil. And these have been remastered in order to be more easily usable. The recharge is pretty short. It gets longer as you, I think, it gets. Well, I don't know if it's this particular power, but some of the AoE holds do have the recharges tweaked in that last update. So in other words, you can use them more often if it's only one or two guys you're targeting, so it's almost like a single target attack. But the AoE, the more you hit with it, I think what they call it, the adaptive recharge or something like that. But anyway, so this power, you summon a large amount of energy that periodically jolts nearby chains. So basically, it's a patch that you throw out there, and it starts to pulse the holds and stuff. So if we pull this up, mag 3 holds, it's pulsing. More endurance, it's pulsing. Energy damage, it's going to pulse, right? It's doing all kinds of things, minus recovery. So you're doing all these little jolty things. The debuff, this is going to be the movement speed. The recharge is being debuff. So you got a decent amount of minus recharge that you're able to throw out with this guy too, between Tesla coil and was it static, whatever the heck the thing that was called, static field, right? So we've got some ability to paralyze people pretty effectively if I'm reading these numbers correctly. You got movement speed, debuff, recharge, debuffing. Combine that with lingering radiation, right? So you'll be able to kind of tank with this guy as long as he's survivable enough. And then gremlins, there's your pets, right? You bring your pets out there. These guys have jolting chains, so they're going to be able to knock down even more people like you are. So between you and your two gremlins, you got 3 jolting chains popping around. People are flopping. More minus endurance with that attack. They got a charge brawl. They're going to punch. They're going to get more minus endurance. They got electric brawl. They're going to punch. They got the shock power. That's a ranged attack, I think it is. 7-foot radius. Maybe it's just a. Oh yeah, so it's just around them. They have a shocking aura around them. So they're mostly a melee, but they will throw shocking chain out there. What are their resistance numbers? I'm not curious about that. 40% damage resistance, energy psi, 20% to fire, cold, negative, etc. So, not the greatest resistances, 30% for smash lethal. So if you can get those numbers up a little bit, they'll definitely be pretty survivable. They do like to get themselves into trouble, though. They hop around the damn battlefield and get freaking smoked. Oh, and I forgot one last power. Skipped over it, was your confused chain, which is pretty nice. I often skip this on my electric control characters just because I feel I have enough other things. And, do I need this? It's really nice confused, don't get me wrong, because it jumps. So that's the good thing. It's better than some of the other confuses out there that are single target, like the one in what is it, dark control. I'm not a fan of that one, possess or whatever. This is much more effective, I think, and it also has a minus endurance on top of that, if I'm reading this correctly. So that's interesting. Only problem is that's then going to aggro. So I think even if you miss, you're going to aggro because of the minus endurance debuff proccing firing at the enemy. So there you go. I mean, you got a whole suite of powers that you can deploy as Trinculo that's going to pair up nicely, I think, with his radiation effects. So he's kind of got a wide range of stuff that he can do. But the draining, the minus, movement stuff, some of the knockback things, I think he's going to paralyze people and clump them up and then let his team go to work. So when you take these two characters and you throw them into Chatty Cathy and ask for her opinion on what she thinks is, their strengths and stuff, and then who she thinks she's going to win, Here's what she came up with. So she says, Despina, she's has a good combination of radiation, water blast. Is going to give her a ranged debuff specialist who softens foes and bolsters her team from a safe distance. So yeah, I agree there. That's going to kind of be her thing. She's going to be back here. Her enemies are going to be, over here. Maybe she's got a tank or something like that hanging in here. Guys around them, she's going to be able to throw those toggles in here to debuff. She's going to be able to throw, let's say, a lingering radiation on them to slow them all down. And then she's going to be able to just start raining bombs of the water on top of everything there. Throw a whirlpool underneath this whole mess. Keep it all clumped up around, the melee action. And she'll be mobile, so she doesn't have to just stay in one place. I think that could be a factor between these two, because Trinculo has to be much more fixed position, where Despina is going to be able to stick and move as needed. Radiation emission, you got team-wide boosts like accelerate metabolism. You got potent minus damage, minus defense toggles like enervating field, radiation infection. AoE slows, regen debuffs with radiation, lingering radiation, EM pulse. Water blast, steady ranged pressure. You got layered minus defense in there, minus speed. You got knockback. There's dehydrate has its own heal. And they're all going to scale up with that tidal power mechanic that Water Blast has. I really like Water Blast as a set across the board. I think it's probably the best blast set in my opinion. I'm not talking like damage numbers per se, but it does pretty good. But it's just got so much going for it. Great utility set on top of everything else. Energy Mastery, I haven't mentioned this yet, but Energy Mastery, the big thing here is that it's got conserve power, because I am going to be worried about endurance on this character, I think. Grant survivability, extra survivability with temporary invulnerability. You do have a punch with total focus. You do have like your God mode survivability power as well. So there is some options here. Energy Mastery is not the flashiest of the epic sets, but it's, I think, can help bolster her ability to maintain an attack flow with these other sets. So expect Despina will excel at battlefield prep and boss shredding via stacked debuffs and steady ranged output. Yeah, I agree. I think that's definitely what she's going to be able to do. Her kit is highly plug and play, ideal for fast moving teams or heavy melee lineups. She's not built to survive solo for long, but thrives with her team when her team capitalizes on her broad minus resistance and defense layering. But yeah, this is definitely true. And that's probably true for all defenders. Uh, they live and die by the team. All right, let's take a look at what Kathy is saying about Trinculo's chances here. So she's got Trinculo is bringing a combination of electric with radiation. You're going to get a suppression heavy controller who dominates the tempo of the fight by draining endurance and disrupting foes. Yeah, I think this is true. I think if he can get, those patches out underneath his foes, if he's able to throw, the lingering radiation on them, he's able to, get them sleeping. He's able to stand next to them and start draining them. Yeah, they're not going to be able to get a nice consistent flow of attack coming against him or his allies. Electric control weaves immobilizes, knockdowns, holds, confuses, and AoE end drainage into a pulsing rhythm of control, with the gremlins and the conductive aura adding persistent pressure. Yeah, agree. Radiation emission supplies the same minus resistance and damage debuff suite as Despina, but it's layered through a more active short range control frame. So that's going to be an interesting thing. So you're layering it with this short range active trying to control things as he's moved into melee, because he's going to have to get in here too to really leverage his stuff. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. And then Mew Mastery is going to give us more attack, more minus endurance, right? We've got Ball Lightning, Power Sync. You can break out the Moo Guardian to have an extra pet. So it's going to help bolster his attack, bolster his debuffing, give him another ally. So expect Trinculo to destabilize enemy formations. This kind of reminds me of Dead Cell's plan for my support stalker concept. Very similar idea. Destabilizing enemy formations, just disrupting them, making them sleep, making their endurance drain, etc. Then he's going to may offer less burst pressure. Yeah, definitely less burst. He's more chipping away. She's going to explode, but he's bringing in higher crowd control, uptime, and added pet-based suppression. So that's going to be, I think, the big question. Despina is going to be bursting, right? He is going to be just uptime, crowd control, and his pets just suppressing everything. Constant drain and pain is going out. And then his survivability is going to hinge on maintaining control momentum. Without it, he's vulnerable to focused retaliation. Yeah, it's true. If things break containment on him, they're going to want to kick his behind, given what he's going to do to them with all the debuffing nonsense. All right. Interesting, interesting. So, taking that all into consideration, I asked Kathy, make your prediction. Who do you think's going to win? Adding this all up. Here's what she says. Prediction. Winner. Despina. With a narrow edge based on ranged sustain, easier mitigation, and broader impact pacing. Here's her breakdown. She's got multiple categories going to Despina as advantage. So she's saying survivability. She's going to be at mid-range, which is going to keep her out of the alpha zone, and the self-heal with the dehydrate. Plus, you got some resistance coming in from energy mastery. So she thinks by staying away and having an extra heal, that's going to be more survivability. And I agree. I think Trinculo might be in for a punishing evening. Risk, Despina. Early debuff layering with the minus hit. The minus damage reduces alpha damage to allies faster than Trinculo's PBOEs. Because if he has to go into... Now, he does have the same toggles, yes. But if he's also relying upon getting into melee, he needs to move his body. That's going to take more time. It's going to increase the risk. Resilience, Despina. Lower total intake is expected due to her playing more distant. Geyser, steam spray, and patch rotation let her whittle enemies before they converge. Yeah, so before they're able to get on her, she'll be able to take out minions, knock stuff up in the air, that sort of thing. Slow it down. Avoidance, Despina. Avoids constant melee exposure, so she can stay out of melee. She'll only have to worry about range. And then she's got her own range attacks that have some knockback or knockdown. Geyser, water burst, etc. It's going to help her be mobile and keep her safe because stuff is going to be on its back. Provisioning, Despina, Water Blast is low maintenance. This is true. She can keep range rotation going while her toggles and buffs remain active. So she's just got throw a toggle out, maybe two toggles, and then start blasting away. That's all she really needs to do. Where Trinculo is going to have to throw a toggle, move into melee, throw a control, throw some more controls, right? Maybe move out of melee. Lethality, she thinks Trinculo, because the gremlins, all that minus endurance effects, the melee lockdown. He'll be able to secure kills over time. So yeah, he's right up in the thick of it. He should be able to get some of those coup de grace out there. Threat, Despina, Water Blast is stronger burst damage cycles enhanced by power buildup and geysers high damage. Yeah, you have power buildup, which is a plus damage boost in your energy mastery. So she's got that, and she's got access to it's not aim. What is it called? Tidal power in her secondary blast set. So between these two, she'll be able to boost accuracy damage pretty good. So she should be able to get some good burst damage out there, especially with something like Geyser just exploding. Disruption, Trinculo for sure, right? He's got Tesla Cage, Synaptic Overload, the Gremlins, all that static field, all that crowd control. He'll have consistent control pacing, especially if you can keep things clustered. And then efficiency, she's got Despina again. Less exposed to incoming AoEs and crossfire. Her toolkit is going to scale better in fast clear environments without taxing pet losses or toggle sustain. Yeah, so she doesn't worry about resummoning a pet or, stuff is dead. I got to, move my toggle or I need to move my control patch or something like that. She can move toggles and blast on the fly. So here's what the final analysis prediction is. Trinculo may dominate close quarters attrition, leveraging his toggles, his PBOEs, conductive aura, choking cloud, his layered debuffs, and the disruption from static field to suppress clustered spawns from within. However, Despina's mid-range play allows her to layer debuffs earlier, rotate around enemies, and maintain high uptime on her Water Blast AoEs while keeping herself safer from alpha strikes and pet losses. Yeah, so Kathy's definitely leaning into positional play with this one. And part of this is because after the Frisan Sensate debacle, where she predicted that Empathy Controller would dominate Ankh, my Empathy Defender, and quite the contrary happened. Ankh punished Frisan. We had a chat about this, Chatty Cathy and I, about, hey, you're leaning too heavily your analysis on just this ability to raw control things, and there's much more to the combats, like position and tempo and that sort of thing. So in the aftermath of that, I gave her some additional pointers about the way the game works, and so I think now she's leaning more into that idea of tempo and mobility is important in these 801s, more so than the ability to just throw down controls every which way. Because all it takes is an enemy getting out of that control area or through the control area, and your meat. So where Trinculo relies on internal lockdown and enemy depletion, Despina wins through pre-contact suppression and rotational damage. Her toolkit also scales better with unstable teams. That I don't know yet, and I'm not sure I'm going to have an unstable team. But anyway, especially those prone to erratic movements. So this is the one thing that's true. I think Despina is going to be more responsive. If the team moves, she'll be able to move with it. I don't think Trinculo has that advantage. If the team moves, does he move and leave the enemies he was just debuffing and controlling with his auras behind? And then when they snap out of it, they start attacking him? Or does he stay there and then isolate himself from the team? It's going to be a problem. Or if somebody needs his help and they're fleeing and he's trying to go help them, and now he's left whatever controls behind him and exposed himself to a bunch of range stuff rather than being in that melee thick of it. So, there you have it. Kathy's predictions. But that's what Kathy is thinking. The real question, of course, is, well, what do we think? Who do you think is going to win? I have my suspicions on who it is, but I'm going to wait till, of course, I actually run the test. And that is the whole point of this, right? Is to actually not come up with some on paper supposed matchup, which is the sort of thing you always see on the forums or Reddit or something like that. Somebody talking a good game about their numbers. What really happens in the thick of combat in a live game exercise? So we're going to find this out. The only question left at this point is who is going to go first, Despina or not Frisan Sensate? No, I got to change that. Hold on a second. Frisan, he's long gone. He's dead. There we go. Fixed now. So, who's going to win this? Despina, the Radiation Water Energy Defender, or Trinculo, the Electric Control Radiation Mu Mastery Controller? So we got to figure out who's going to go first in this exercise. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the handy dandy flip a coin, and let's find out who's going to go first. So our tradition is this: heads, it's the defender; tails, it's the controller. Let's do this. 3, 2, 1, flip it. Bang, tails. It is going to be our controller. Trinculo is going first. Well, there you have it, guys and gals. I'm going to wrap up this video here. And the next installment is going to be, I'm going to go through Trinculo's build with you using Mids Reborn. And then we're going to run a little solo action. I'm going to take on some just basic mobs and see what this guy can do as far, or at least showcase what he can do with his powers. And then once we've done that video, we're going to go ahead and put together our team trials. This is going to be those 801s. And I'm going to have a team of 5 running some level 54x8 killer incarnate content and see what he can do on a team. And then I'm going to collect the stats from this run and then do the same thing, repeat over here with Despina, and compare those numbers head to head using Sithlin's DPS tool. Well, there you are, ladies and gents. That is our matchup for Radiation Emission. We'll catch you in the next video. Have yourselves a good one. Peace out.